So, hello, I'm Karen, and this is Why Go Vegan. And I am delighted to be joined by the fabulous Tom Pickering. Now, Tom is a documentary filmmaker and also the star of I Could Never Go Vegan. The film talks about the common objections to adopting a vegan lifestyle. So, Tom, great to see you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me, and always a pleasure to chat with you, Karen.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, I'd love to hear from you an overview of your film. I know you connected with lots of vegan communities. I'd love to know a lot more about the film.
Yeah, so it's called "I Could Never Go Vegan" because we hear this phrase quite a lot. People say "I could never go vegan," then it's usually followed with some reason or other. And so the idea really came out of, well, why do people say they couldn't go vegan, and are any of these reasons justified? And so basically, it took us on a quest to find out at least all the leading reasons that we hear time and time again, and then go and speak to the professionals, whether it's chefs, athletes, whether it's environmentalists, scientists, doctors, nutritionists, depending on the actual question or the argument against veganism. We speak to the professionals who can actually answer this for us, and we speak to a whole host of fantastic people in the film. We're so proud of the evidence we use in the film. We don't try and hide behind misleading studies. Everything we present is very clear cut. It's very transparent. We share all the studies on our website as well, so people can go and find out more if they want to, and they can look at all our sources. And I'm very, without giving too much away, but I think we all know there is no reason why you shouldn't go vegan. So.
That's fantastic. And could you tell us a bit about the people that were involved? Because you went out and saw different people and you asked them for their advice on what they thought about being vegan.
Yeah, so the full cast in the film, actually, they're all fantastic people, and they all gave up their time for nothing other than their love of veganism and wanting to be a part of the documentary. And so people like, we speak to a lot of people from plant-based health professionals when it comes to the nutritional side of things and the health benefits. So like Dr. Shireen Kassam or Rohini Pacheco. We speak to Dr. Alan Desmond, Dr. Gemma Newman. So really great people in that space. When it comes to the environmental aspects, we speak to the fantastic George Monbiot, who is such a leading voice in this space. Also, people like Randall Plunkett, who was effectively he's inherited this mass amount of land that he was making, or his family before were making money from. He chose to stop all of that because a large part of that was from they were bringing in animals and this kind of thing. He chose to stop all of that because he's vegan, and he chose to rewild the entire land. And it's such a great success story of how nature just can really thrive if given the chance. And then there's also like a whole host of fantastic athletes. So people like Sophia Ellis, who's British powerlifting champion and like the strongest person I've ever met in real life. She's incredible. People like actually sort of a crossover with someone like Dr. Manil Patel, who is an excellent athlete, but he's also a doctor. So really interested to listen to Mike Kopok, who is an ultra runner. Paul Yude, who's in his late 80s and is an ultra runner. Lisa Abel, who's a CrossFit champion. We have like an abundance of excellent talent in the film, really just to showcase what's on offer if you adopt a vegan lifestyle, and that you won't be deficient of anything, you won't struggle in certain areas, as long as you do everything as you should, of course. I mean, any kind of, if you look at it like a diet, which veganism isn't a diet, but if you were to approach it like that, it still needs to be well planned, just like any diet needs to be well planned. But veganism offers so much more than that. And then we also speak to people on the lots of great organisations and people on the ethics side, which is the part that I'm really more passionate about. And so when it comes to animal rights, we worked with a great organisation called Animal Justice Project, who we did some undercover stuff with, and the work they do is fantastic. Went to a really lovely sanctuary, one of my favourite sanctuaries, Pear Tree Farm, and Catherine Mount there, who runs the sanctuary, gave some really great insight into the difference between, when it comes to farmed animals and when it comes to animals living their best lives in the sanctuary. And I mean, the listeners, I think we have about 40 different people who pop up in there, so it was really quite widespread. But we wanted it to be, because we wanted to show the scale and show that, we haven't just cherry picked the odd person to try and say something that we believe in. We want to actually look at this objectively and speak to a number of different people and look at the studies, look at the science, look at the evidence. So and I'm really pleased. I couldn't be happier with the final film.
It was fantastic. I've got to tell you, Why Go Vegan people, I was lucky enough to be at the film premiere, and there was such a buzz. It was just such a wonderful event. I know there's been other premieres and screenings, and I just thought it was such a fantastic film. Were there any surprises for you throughout this vegan experience and the filming?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest surprises for me actually were more on the environmental side of things, I think, because that's where actually I felt like I was learning more and more, because I figured I knew a fair bit about that, but then when you really dive into it, it's quite staggering, the stuff that you learn. And then, not necessarily surprising, but like traumatizing and heartbreaking, when I went sort of undercover into a farm and just, basically filming things as they are in everyday life for these animals. That was horrific. Still, like it stuck with me to this very day as that. But yeah, in terms of like actually being surprised by some of the stats, then definitely on stuff like the amount of land that's used, when it comes to animal agriculture, on some of the things that we don't really necessarily think about a lot, like eutrophication or acidification. So when people will talk about extensive farming, and use words like free range, forgetting that that's incredibly destructive to the planet because of the amount of land it takes up, then because of like the runoff and the pollution into rivers and soil damage and all of that stuff. So I mean, ultimately there's really no good way to farm animals. It just shouldn't be done, full stop. And that's kind of what we obviously conclude at the end. But it was still important to look at every side of it, because you can guarantee that someone might say they're against factory farming. Okay, but then that's not to suggest that then we should be doing extensive farming and using more land, because that's also incredibly destructive, and it's still horrible for the animals. It's still the same outcome at the end, they ultimately die and they're needlessly consumed. So yeah, we wanted to make sure we looked at every single aspect, and it was very time consuming to do that, but it was worth it, I think, because it's important to get those points across so people can't then jump to the next argument, like, oh well, what about this?
Yeah, love that, Tom. Well, listen, I think we're pretty much out of time. I wish we had several hours. Thank you for joining us today, Tom. We all love the film. We'll put a link to it as well, but amazing work. And thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to Why Go Vegan.